it's well noted that the best fight song in professional sports is the Bear Down Chicago Bears. I mean, there's nothing in dispute there, I'm pretty sure, right? And the last line of that song is, "You're the pride and joy of Illinois," which is one of the greatest rhymes in all of popular music. "You're the pride and joy of Illinois, Chicago Bears, bear down." You can't sing that song if you're in Hammond, Indiana. Welcome to Wait, What? Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGee, the podcast that takes an often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David Parro.
And I'm Tim McGee.
Well, this is another multinational edition of Wait, What? As Tim is patching in from the Republic of Ireland. So I need to let you know, I decided to look at our stats, and I'm telling you, we need to get the word out there, as your beautiful ancestral home is not particularly high on the list of countries tuning into this podcast. Now, I'm guessing that's not why you're there, so we'll get to that in a little bit. I just wanted to mention it.
Well, I will tell you, if you remember the late great comedian Richard Belzer.
I do.
He had a phenomenal bit on Irish history. He said something to the effect of, like, during the potato famine, something like 2 million Irish people died. He said, Ireland, by definition, is an island. So by definition, it's surrounded by water. He said, are you telling me 2 million people died because they wouldn't eat seafood? What were they, 8-year-olds? So anyway.
All right. Well, tell me what's on your mind, Tim.
Well, I want to talk about something that you brought up. Brooks Koepka, who recently announced he was leaving LIV Golf to spend more time with his family. Apparently his family is going to be on the course at the Farmers Insurance Open, because he has announced that he is coming back to the PGA Tour as part of what Brian Rolap, the CEO, is calling the Returning Member Program.
It's the best name ever.
Which sounds like the next step in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was held in South Africa after apartheid.
Well, this whole story is so great to me. It's so funny. And we did, one of the predictions I made last week on our prediction day show was that no merger would happen because there's nothing really to merge. And I think this is another step along that point. I mean, I'm feeling okay about this one. The other interesting thing about the returning player program is for 2026, there's only 4 players eligible to come back, Brooks Koepka being one of them. The other 3 happen to be Jon Rahm, Cam Smith, and Bryson DeChambeau. Now, those are the 4 names that I think Brian Rolap would want to have back on the tour, and most fans would want to have back on the tour. So the question is will any of them act on this? They only have a short period of time. Another funny part about this story, it's like a promotional window. You have, and they have until, I think, early February to act on this offer. And that last date is right before the LIV Tour kicks off in Saudi Arabia, which
he's not making it easy for these players to return from a financial standpoint, at least. They're giving up 5 years of participation in the Tour Players Equity Program. Rolap himself estimated that could cost them between $50 and $85 million in potential earnings. They're also they're eligible for President's Cup and TGL, but they'll be ineligible for this year's $100 million FedEx bonus program. And then just to close out that thought, Koepka apparently has made a $5 million donation to charity. I don't know what charity it is. Maybe you do. So here's the other thing. So these guys all were signed to incredibly large guaranteed contracts at LIV. And maybe they're learning that as those contracts come up for renewal, they will not nearly be as lucrative, so obviously they're giving up whatever they would have made on LIV. They're giving up participation in this equity program. But at least in the case of Koepka, he has found that it's worth it for him to return to the tour.
Yeah, in fairness to them, they may have factored that into the decision, right? That they banked so much on on their contracts, original contracts, and Koepka was one of the big ones, of course, that it's worth it to them to be able to at least go back on a week in, week out basis, play against what would be regarded as the best competition. The interesting one is going to be, my guess is that Rahm, whether he does it right away or he waits, I don't know. But Rahm would be the one that seems to make sense. Cam Smith has not played particularly well since he moved over to LIV. Rahm is still playing at a high level, and DeChambeau's clearly playing at a ridiculously high level.
Koepka won five events on the LIV Tour.
No, I'm not saying Koepka's done. He's already over there.
Yeah, so but what I'm saying is he was making a lot of money in addition to what his guarantee was. He was making a lot of money in earnings on the LIV Tour. So he's playing at a level, I guess he figures that he can compete at a high enough level on the PGA Tour to make up at least some of that. And the Tour has made significant changes to prize pools since LIV started.
We've said it multiple times, and I will say it again. Again, I'm trying to be as fair as possible here. There is no doubt that the PGA Tour made significant changes in everything that they do, the way they operate, based on the pressure that was felt because of what LIV did, coming at them from when Norman launched this, and particularly with Phil Mickelson being so particularly aggressive against the Tour. Changes were made, so they could say they did affect the changes. What I don't think counted on is that the Tour would figure out a way to survive that onslaught and do it in a way, as we discussed in detail last week, and really come out of this thing, smelling like a rose. It almost has surprised me that we announced last week that Koepka was leaving. We didn't announce it, but we said it.
We reported it.
We reported what someone else announced. And then right after that, oh, by the way, remember what your backup to spending more time with your family, which is the general default thing when people leave, your backup was a difference in philosophy. So maybe Brooks Koepka just had a difference in philosophy with LIV.
What would be awesome is if Koepka gets paired with Rory in the first round of the Farmers. I'd like to see. In general, I want to see how Rory treats these guys coming back. I think it'll be fine.
I think it'll be fine. I think they'll welcome these guys back. I mean, listen, these guys are, you tell me that Rory and these other top players aren't in the ear. I'm guessing Rolap is doing a really good job of talking to the players. I think he's pretty close with Tiger already. And I think they're going to welcome these guys back with open arms. At least I think the top guys will. I believe so, especially given all of the limitations or penalties, I guess, that they're having to endure. But they were able to take the money. And I think one of the arguments saying that maybe it's not as outright of a win for the PGA Tour is that they did say that they weren't going to be able to come back without severe financial penalty. Mm-hmm. They're not having to pay anything outright. It's all against earnings. But it seems like a pretty serious penalty to me.
It is, and I'm wondering. It seems punitive.
They had to do something, right? It's like when you announce you're going to do something, you gotta make it sound like it's pretty significant, right? You paid a price for messing with us. Maybe it is, but Koepka's doing it. So does that set the? Do they all negotiate their own comeback?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Right, it'll be interesting to see how many players do decide to come back.
Well, like you said, there's only those 4 eligible to do it.
Right.
And to me, there'd be people that would welcome back and want to have back. DeChambeau's the interesting one because he has made a career outside of the tour events that he's playing on or the majors that he plays in, because he's created this whole persona and is a bit of an influencer in his own right. Yeah, I think he's going to be the interesting one on this whole thing. I do suspect that. I wouldn't be surprised if Rahm comes back. Anyway, all right. Another topic that we talked about quite a bit last week was what was going to happen to NASCAR after Steve Phelps, and they did not waste any time in coming out with a whole new format. Not a whole new format. It's basically a return to what was known as the chase for the NASCAR Cup. For those of you that don't remember, Tim, you and I obviously remember the chase when it first came on because it was pretty breakthrough playoff format for NASCAR. And over the last however many years, they'd gone to this other, final race situation, which fans were clearly rebelling against, I guess. And so they're going back to an old thing. And what I find interesting about this story, more so than just the fact that they're going back to this chase format, is two things. One is that in announcing it, they did it in North Carolina. Steve O'Donnell was the lead in the announcement, the president of NASCAR, who was elevated to the president title when Steve Phelps became the commissioner.
Which used to be the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 for NASCAR, right?
Yeah.
Mike Helton,
right,
most famously held that role for many years.
Correct. So we speculated whether Steve O'Donnell was going to come up, or was he going to get caught up in the, the stuff that let's say caught up with Steve Phelps. And then they had Dale Jr., Mark Martin, obviously two legends of the sport, and then along with current drivers, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, and your guy, Chase Briscoe. Now, the second thing I wanted to say is that if you're named Chase at birth, it's like 75+% that you're going to be a race car driver. Is that that's my guess.
Unless your name's Chase Manhattan, but anyway.
Well, I mean, Chase Elliott also is born of racing royalty, so.
Yeah, I think, there are two separate issues that converged in time. It was very clear after this season's championship that there was going to be a change to the playoff format. It just so happens that the announcement was after Steve Phelps' departure, and Steve O'Donnell took the reins, so to speak, on that. But yeah, it's, we talked about it a little bit with Dave Alpern from JGR. I've had these conversations with the guys at the race team. I think, Heath Cherry at JGR runs partnerships. He put it best. He said, you can get down to the, 2-yard line, as a driver, and somebody else fumbles, i.e. they get in a wreck, and then you're done. And through no fault of your own, which was basically what happened this past November.
Yeah, but at the same time, if they were on this system that they're reintroducing, Kyle Larson would have been the champion.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the points. It's just a kind of a weird thing.
I'm curious, right? Your boy SVG, where he would have wound up. Would he? Because would he have 6 wins?
SVG has got to do what like Greg Norman and Phil did, and they just got to go, we're doing a road course tour, NASCAR road course, and we're dominating it. And bring back Boris Said.
Oh, I was going to say they could have the Robbie Gordon Classic, the Boris Said Invitational.
Well, the one big change from the former system is that they are going to, they're not, a win does not guarantee you a spot in the chase, and 55 points for a win, which is more than what they had previously given. So there is an emphasis, continued, like a re-emphasis or even renewed emphasis on winning.
Winning is the name of the game, and obviously it's got to be given the importance, but there's something to be said for consistency too.
But I think what they're trying to do is thread that needle, right?
Right.
And it feels like maybe they have. I just think that coming so quickly, obviously they don't have that much time because the Daytona 500 is upon us very soon. But they put Steve O'Donnell out there in a very big announcement. I think it's going to be quite well received by NASCAR fans. Having Mark Martin there along with these new drivers is a great, nod to the history of it as well as the future of the sport. So I think all in all, well played by NASCAR coming off a tumultuous December and first part of January.
Yeah, I mean, everything old is new again. You go away from a commissioner back to a president. You go from the playoffs to the chase. I think NASCAR's done a good job over the last several years of growing its fan base, taking some, I wouldn't say risk, but doing some new and different things, whether it's a race in Mexico City or the Clash at the Coliseum. I think they'll continue to innovate. And I think what they're doing now is placating the longstanding fans. And you don't have to be a longstanding fan to realize how potentially unfair the last format was.
What else you got?
Well, two things. One, we are on the cusp of what I think is going to be an epic national championship game between the Indiana Hoosiers and the Miami Hurricanes. I think the Hurricanes have certainly answered all their critics on whether or not they should have been in. The Hoosiers are just destroying their competition. One thing I wanted to say is I am so tired of these SEC people, Paul Feinbaum, fans. Well, if we played them 9 times, if we played them 10 times, they'd lose 9 times. Yeah, well, they didn't. Yeah, and you played them once, and that's the way it goes. Somebody said, and I am cynical by nature, but I am not. I don't know quite yet if I'm this cynical. But somebody said, have you noticed now that every team is able to pay its players? The SEC has come back to the pack.
Yeah.
It's an interesting take.
Very interesting take. The record in bowl games overall for the SEC was bad. ACC, interestingly, that almost, had to beg to get Miami in.
Right.
Had quite a good
because
record.
Clemson had that run of several years where they were just a great team.
But, Wake Forest beat an SEC team in their bowl game. But if 3 ACC teams somehow made it into the playoff, they wouldn't have had a good record as they showed. So
right.
I want to be careful about comparisons on this. The SEC and the Big Ten are the dominant football conferences, and I'm not. I think they are. Big 12 is on their heels, right?
I did feel bad for the kids from Ole Miss. I was hoping that they would prevail because they've played under a lot of adversity since Kiffin announced that he was going to LSU. You had guys like Charlie Weiss Jr. who were flying out in the morning, to recruit out of Baton Rouge and then flying back to Starksville to plan at night. I mean, as the great Ron Swanson says, don't half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing.
Brilliant philosopher. I would have pulled for Ole Miss throughout had they not come up against an ACC team. But I was happy to see Miami, vindicate their selection, because if Notre Dame had one target on it, it was Miami when they were bitching and moaning about not getting in. I think overall, putting Indiana number 1, they ended up having to play some tough games here. And, some people going, they won the championship, but should they have been? Yeah, that's been proven. And Miami getting in obviously has proven to make sense. Indiana just blowing out Oregon.
They are absolutely dominating. Now, I will not predict the championship game, but boy, is Indiana a good football team.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is, you have to play the game. Football is a crazy game that way. We're certainly seeing it in the NFL right now. So, of course, anything can happen. I don't see how that could happen, though. I really don't see how Indiana loses, but I'm going to be pulling for Miami. I'll go on record right now and say that.
I think I heard a really interesting stat during the Oregon game. There were teams in the playoffs that had 50 4- and 5-star recruits on their roster. I think Oregon had over 40. Indiana has 8 4- and 5-star recruits on a roster of a team that is absolutely dominating college football. Now, if there is any sort of proof positive that Cignetti is an amazing coach, to me, that's it. It doesn't hurt to obviously have the Heisman Trophy winner in your backfield as a quarterback, but when you're playing teams that have 4, 5, 6, 7 times the number of 4- and 5-star recruits on their roster as you do.
Well, it's coaching in the system and the process of development, because that's the thing about 4- or 5-star recruits. Yes, they often pay out, and all coaches want to have as many of them as possible. But there is a development thing, and I think some coaches are particularly good at that side of it, and then getting them in the right system. But yeah, I'm excited about the game, no doubt about that.
And the last thing I wanted to talk about, continuing to watch what's going on with the WNBA. Both sides have agreed to put a moratorium on free agency as they're going through this. I think in and of itself, it's not a big deal, but the fact that they agreed to something as important as that, again, speaks to what we talked about last week during predictions, which is we don't think that they're going to lose ultimately are not going to lose any games.
Yes, I would agree, and I totally concur with you on that. That's way more of a good sign than a bad sign.
No.
Another follow-up on a prediction that there is some new news coming out of, and that is on the Clippers NBA Steve Ballmer situation. And I only say this, I'm going to, our fellow podcaster Pablo Torre, because we're in that fraternity of sports-related podcasts.
PT, as I call him.
Yeah. He has more receipts on this thing. He also visited the law firm that's doing they invited him to talk to him. Now, I'm not sure exactly why he couldn't reveal anything, but I'm going to stick with my prediction, which is the NBA will find some culpability, but they won't bring the hammer down all that much, meaning sell the team or multiple draft picks or anything like that. It'll be modest, in my opinion, to what the culpability was.
Mm-hmm.
What Torre continues to go after is the deniability that Ballmer has said is, I didn't really know this company. It kind of came to me through their sponsorship. And he's just going back and finding connection after connection after connection.
He was an investor.
Well, but it goes back even like earlier to how he knew these guys. They were like, so it's going to be hard. I feel even more safe in saying that there is going to be some a serious degree of culpability. I still think that they will figure out a way not to penalize them that much, but the big thing coming out of it will be the new guardrails that are put in place. But it's just a remarkable job. All the things that he finds, and one of the things that came out in this last episode of the podcast was, they wouldn't have been that sloppy. And I'm like, well, they weren't that sloppy. That's why it's taken Pablo Torre all this time to dig into this, and the only one that was doing it.
He is one hell of an investigative journalist, not just sports. I mean, he's just, he digs and he gets stories. He's actually a funny guy. If you watch, if you listen to him or watch him, he's got a self-effacing sense of humor. But he's very good at what he does.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome when we're on, Meadowlark Media alongside that podcast, or because I wouldn't want to necessarily compete directly with him, but I'd rather be a partner.
It would be nice to call him colleague.
Sure would.
Brother in arms.
The last thing I want to talk about before we take a break is a bit of a shout out in our pre-shout out period to past guest Mike McCann, the lawyer Mike McCann. There was an interesting settlement that I just read a piece by him in Sportico on a licensing deal involving Aaron Judge and MLBPA. I don't know if you've been following that story as a bit of a collector. There was maybe I thought about it because of you. It was a Long Island guy that back in 2017, Judge's rookie year, had registered a trademark for 𝗟𝗫, and here comes the judge trying to claim, and this goes back, there had been a case he had lost, but he appealed it, and then they just upheld this. And Mike McCann, who is one of the foremost thinkers and communicators on issues of sports law, talked about this licensing issue and the importance of use of a trademark, not just filing for a trademark. The thing I found interesting is this guy, I won't mention his name, but he tried to claim he wasn't a baseball fan, even though he was from the New York area. He'd never been to Yankee Stadium, really didn't know that much about Aaron Judge. But he happened to call his patent attorney the day after Aaron Judge won the home run derby his rookie year. I think that just the timing of that probably wasn't great for his case.
Yeah, that's interesting. Aaron Judge is an investor in a friend of mine's equity partner in a friend of mine's company that makes socks. He wears Tall Order socks. That's the name of the company. A friend of mine from college started this company, and she was introduced to Aaron Judge, and I advised her on the equity deal. And
are they good socks?
What's that?
Are they good socks?
Oh, they're amazing socks. Yeah.
Bring it on. Tell them to send some to the show. We'll talk about it.
I have some at home. And then part of the proceeds go to 9/11 victims' families, because this woman, my friend, lost her husband tragically.
That's great.
When their two sons were very young in 9/11. So.
Now that's a good time to take a break. We'll be right back.
we are back. And now is the time in the show where we give shout outs, take a look ahead, thank our guests, and then leave until we come back next week. So, David, what's on your mind? That's pretty much
sums
it. Up what we did.
Right. Yeah. And you even included, thank our guests, which we don't have a guest this week, so we thank ourselves. I'm going to mostly be shout outs here. First of all, the great Bob Weir passed away on Saturday at the age of 78. And I'm calling him out because I think you might be a little bit of a bigger deadhead than I am, but I respect the band, I admire the band, and I love Bob Weir. And I love the fact how much of a sports fan he was. He was particularly a San Francisco 49ers fan, and I'm kind of glad that the Bears don't have to play the 49ers in this next round, or I would have been having to deal with that cognitive dissonance or whatever. But rest in peace, Bob Weir. Phil Lesh, Jerry Garcia, and now Bob Weir all passed from that great, amazing band that brought so many people joy. All right, so back to the Bears. This is a shout out to all my Bears people. A special shout out to our guy Ed Lynch, because he and I feel like we're people outside of Chicago that are still diehards. Now I do know that after the second week of the season, I said I had already given up on them. Well, obviously I'm back. But the biggest thing I want to do is call out these pearl clutchers, particularly Green Bay Packers fans, that don't even understand the intensity and the greatness of this rivalry and how good it is for both teams and for the league. And the league is loving this. I love that Tom Brady has gotten all behind this. And I'm not saying the Bears are the greatest team in the world, and maybe they have gotten lucky this year, but they've come back an amazing number of times, and they beat the Packers at a crazed Soldier Field on Saturday night, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever heard. And
what was it, 21-3 at halftime?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It was an amazing fourth quarter. 25 points in the fourth quarter they scored. Just unbelievable performance. And the number of people from outside, the media, and I know criticizing Dick Vitale is sacrilegious. We're both college hoop fans, and he's been a legend. But I don't need to hear it from Dickie V. Dickie V was a lifetime handholder of Bob Knight, and he's getting on the Ben Johnson for saying
F the Packers.
Fuck the Packers. I'll just say it. That's what he said in a moment of excitement in the locker room, and he's embraced this rivalry, and Matt LaFleur and Ben Johnson don't have cordial handshakes when they come off the field. It's the freaking best thing that's happened to Chicago, and I'm all in on it. And so I don't know what's going to happen this weekend. The Rams are tough, but
you have every right to fanboy out. Let me bring it back to the business of sports. Here's a question. If the Bears are able to win the Super Bowl or even make it to the Super Bowl, how does that impact their ability to get a new stadium deal?
So the stadium thing is another issue, and we're going to hopefully have a guest on soon enough where we can talk about it. This stadium issue has been managed horrendously by the Bears, in my opinion. So, when the Bears got Kevin Warren from the Big Ten as the president, I think there was some excitement. But that business side of things, I don't think they've managed well. Yeah, I wish they'd stay. I wish they'd build on the the McCormick Place lot that they had a potential opportunity to build on. Then Arlington Heights came into play, and now they're adding Northwest Indiana, which is part of the Chicago DMA. But I'm going to say, does it make Illinois and Chicago step up to the plate more? Maybe it does. I don't know. But I think the Bears have I'm not happy with the way that the Bears have managed this. They belong in Illinois. I don't care if Northwest Indiana is part of the DMA. If you've ever driven on that stretch of 80, going from between Northwest Indiana and Chicago, it's like the worst. It's bad all days of the week at all times. And adding that type of thing on a Sunday or Saturday or Monday night or Thursday night would just be ridiculous for people coming from Illinois.
Oh, you mean it would be like going on the Jersey Turnpike on a Sunday when the Jets or Giants are playing?
There's a more important reason. It's well noted that the best fight song in professional sports is the Bears, bear down Chicago Bears. I mean, there's nothing in dispute there, I'm pretty sure, right? And the last line of that song is, "You're the pride and joy of Illinois," which is one of the greatest rhymes in all of popular music. "You're the pride and joy of Illinois, Chicago Bears, bear down." You can't sing that song if you're in Hammond, Indiana, or Gary, Indiana, or East Chicago, which is the funniest name of anything, East Chicago. It's like being
Sort of
born
like
and raised in South Detroit, which is Windsor, Canada.
East St. Louis, too.
Well, East St. Louis is, the East St. Louis is a similar thing. Not even in the state, it's in Illinois. East St. Louis is in Illinois. East Chicago is in Indiana.
I will say that Meet the Mets, Step Right Up, and Greet the Mets is up there too.
I'm kidding, by the way. I couldn't name one other professional sports fight song except the, Sixer song is pretty great.
Yeah.
10-9-8 76ers. That's pretty good. And, Go Cubs Go by, the late great Steve Goodman is pretty good. But I'm Chicago homering here, obviously. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to shout out is what George Pine has been doing, past guest George Pine at Bruin Capital, I think is really fascinating. I love the fact that he hasn't necessarily focused on buying teams, which seems to be all the people in PE just want a piece of the teams. They want to get involved in owning teams and conferences and college athletic programs and so forth. He just opened another platform, $1 billion investment platform, and he got money in from a lot of big dogs, and he's totally focused on what he's calling second level enablers, like building the infrastructure for sports, the data, the media, commercial services vital to the industry. And when we talked to him, he spoke of all those things, and he's really been delivering them on them. So hats off to George and Bruin Capital.
Yeah, I think, listen, discipline in investing is absolutely critical for success, and he has demonstrated that by sticking to what he thinks is important. And, if we go back to the conversation, what's going to enhance the fans' experience, what's going to bring the sport to the next level is sort of what he's been talking about. Mm-hmm. Paraphrasing, obviously, but that he's been very consistent in his investing discipline.
Yeah. All right. Over to you. What do you have your eye on?
Yeah, obviously the college football playoffs next Monday night is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I was thinking last week, you said you gave up on your Bears in the third week. You came back. I did not go back to the New York Jets. And the NFL playoffs are fun to watch. It doesn't matter who is in it. And this past weekend, this wild card weekend, boy, was it named appropriately. Those games, those comeback games were just unbelievable. So many close games. And so the next weekend is, I'll miss any games on Saturday because we won't be home yet, but hopefully I'll be home on Sunday. So get to watch that. It's just really exciting. And then the following weekend is the highlight of the sports calendar. It is the annual Cornell-Harvard hockey game. So I will be in Section M's row in seats 3 and 4 that night for sure.
How are you feeling? Where are the teams
Cornell's
right now?
Yeah, Cornell is very good this year. The whole 𝗚𝗏 is pretty good. Not the whole 𝗚𝗏, but there's a lot of stacking of teams at the top. Dartmouth is very good this year. Cornell really had to reload. They have a freshman goalie after a goalie who had played 4 years. They have a lot of young kids, but a couple of senior leaders as well. So they beat Harvard and Cambridge earlier this year. They should beat them. But Harvard's traveling partner, the way it works in the 𝗚𝗏 is Dartmouth. So wherever Harvard goes, Dartmouth goes that same weekend. And Dartmouth is number 1 in the 𝗚𝗏, and they're a very, very good team. So it should be a fun weekend of hockey.
Well,
so okay.
Go Big Red.
All right. So I'm back to my vacation now. After we sign off, I want to thank you, David. I thank our listeners. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment, tell your friends, check us out at dpandmcgee.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. So until next week, he's DP, I'm McGee, and we'll talk soon.